A white wall. 37 blood droplets scattered at angles that look, to the untrained eye, like chaos. To me, it looks like a map. I once heard a defense attorney say, in open court, that anyone can look at a bloody crime scene and know exactly what happened. I wish it were that simple. If it were, I wouldn't need 16 years in the field, a protractor, a laser, and sometimes 3 days locked in a lab calculating impact angles drop by drop. Welcome to Forensic Dossier. Today, blood is going to tell a story, but only after trigonometry finishes doing the math.
Science never lies. Forensic Dossier.
If you've ever watched any crime procedural, you know the scene. The expert walks in, stares at the wall for 5 seconds, furrows their brow and announces, "The shooter stood here, 6 foot tall, left-handed. Cut to trial, case closed." That's maybe the most dangerous myth TV builds around my job. The idea that bloodstain pattern analysis, BPA, is an instant read, almost a gift. That blood speaks on its own, with no instrument, no calculation, no time invested. And there's a second layer to this myth, even more misleading. The idea that blood always behaves the same way. That a drop falling on tile looks like a drop falling on fabric, on carpet, on porous wood. It doesn't. And that's exactly where poorly trained analysts and clever defense attorneys turn science into a trap. On TV, the expert touches the stain with a gloved finger and says, "Still fresh, less than an hour old." In reality, coagulation, ambient temperature, humidity, and the surface itself change that timeline so drastically that any estimate without lab testing is, at best, an educated guess, and at worst, an error that becomes courtroom evidence. Here's what actually happens. Every blood drop that hits a surface at an angle, not perpendicularly, deforms in a specific way. It stops being a perfect circle and becomes an ellipse with a tail pointing back toward the direction it came from. And here's the math nobody shows on TV. The impact angle is calculated as the arcsine of the width divided by the length of the stain. Angle equals arcsine, width divided by length. Sounds intimidating written out, but think of it this way. The more elongated the ellipse, the shallower the impact angle. The drop came in nearly grazing the surface. The rounder it is, the closer to perpendicular the impact was. I like to explain this to prosecutors with a simple analogy. Think of a marble thrown against a wall. Throw it straight, it leaves a round mark. Throw it at a glancing angle, it leaves a long streak. Blood behaves by that exact same geometric logic, just at millimeter scale. And I have to measure dozens of these marks, not just one, because a single drop can lie by accident, but 40 drops measured consistently cannot. After calculating the angle of each individual drop, the next step is triangulation. Stretching strings, or today running 3D software, from each stain, following the exact direction and angle calculated. Where those lines converge in three-dimensional space is the area of origin, the precise location, in height and position, from which the blood departed at the moment of injury. In my field experience, this is the point in a report where prosecutors and defense attorneys both go quiet. Because this isn't opinion. It's analytic geometry applied to fluid dynamics, with a documented margin of error. And that margin matters more than it sounds. An error of just 3 or 4 degrees in the calculated angle can shift the area of origin by tens of centimeters. That's the difference between the victim was standing and the victim was on their knees. It's the difference between a self-defense claim holding up and a self-defense claim collapsing on cross-examination. And here's the most important warning in this video. Surface type changes everything. Blood on smooth glass spreads one way, forming clean, predictable edges. The same volume, at the same velocity, on cotton fabric, carpet, or porous wood, produces jagged edges, satellite spatter, small secondary droplets breaking off the main impact, and partial absorption that distorts the original ellipse. It's like comparing a water drop landing on glass versus the same drop landing on a sponge. The physics is identical, the visible result is completely different. An analyst who ignores the surface is, in practice, using the wrong ruler, and will calculate an angle that doesn't match the physical reality of the event. There's a detail that almost never makes it into fiction. Before I even touch the trigonometry, I have to classify the stain category itself. Passive drops, which simply fell due to gravity. Transfer stains, created by direct contact between a bloody surface and another surface. And projected spatter, created by force, impact, arterial pressure, or a gunshot. Confusing these three categories is the single most common error in bad bloodstain analysis, and it's exactly the error that put an innocent man behind bars in the case I'm about to walk you through. Let's be direct about what's at stake here. This technique doesn't tell you who pulled the trigger. It has no name, no fingerprint, no face. What it reconstructs is position, the exact position of the victim and the attacker at the moment of violence. And that's exactly why BPA is so powerful for confirming or dismantling a version of events. If someone claims self-defense, saying, "I was standing, they lunged at me, I fired," the geometry of the blood will confirm or contradict that story without needing a single witness. But here's the danger. When a poorly trained expert interprets these stains by gut feeling instead of trigonometry, the result isn't just a technical error. It's an innocent person behind bars, or a guilty one walking free. I've seen reports claiming high-velocity spatter consistent with a gunshot that were, in reality, contact transfer stains, physically distinct phenomena with completely different origins, but easily confused by an untrained eye or a rushed one. This isn't a theoretical scenario. It's a real case that became a worldwide reference point for the limits and the risks of this technique when misapplied. So next time you see a TV expert stare at a bloody wall and announce the solution to the crime in 5 seconds, remember what you learned here today. Behind every drop is an ellipse waiting to be measured, an angle waiting to be calculated with arcsine, and strings, or software, converging on a point in space that doesn't forgive guesswork. Blood doesn't lie, but it doesn't speak on its own either. It needs someone willing to measure, calculate, and question their own conclusion before signing a report that could define the rest of someone's life. This is Forensic Dossier. Real science, no Hollywood. If you want to keep learning what TV hides about my work, subscribe and hit the bell. The next myth is waiting.